Early life and Meru roots. Musa Mwariama was born in 1928 in a remote Meru village on the slopes of Mount Kenya. His birth name was Baringo Mamuchiri. In Meru tradition, a boy's name changes after his circumcision. Baringo became Mikirigwa. The forest fighters gave him the nickname Mwariama, meaning truth-teller. His father was a wealthy warrior soothsayer, and young Musa spent childhood tending his flocks and learning the old ways. He grew up bitter about land loss. Colonial schemes had stolen rich fields from his people. In fact, his family lost land under the Crown Lands Ordinance in 1915. These Meru highlands would shape him, proud, resilient, and ready to fight for justice. Rise to Mau Mau leadership. By the early 1950s, the revolt against British rule had begun, and Mwariama was quick to join. In 1950, he walked into the forest with other young rebels intent on freedom. He proved an instinctive leader and strategist. He even led Meru fighters to a victory over British troops at Olenguruone in 1952. His daring and charisma earned him rapid promotion. By the mid-1950s, he was one of the top commanders, a field marshal, in the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, the Mau Mau. In fact, together with Dedan Kimathi, he formed the core leadership of the rebellion. As the highest-ranking Mau Mau from the Meru region, he commanded loyalty and discipline. His full beard and tall stature made him look almost hypnotic to followers and foes alike. Meru and other eastern fighters soon viewed him as the unquestioned field marshal of Nyambene. Guerrilla tactics and survival field. Marshal Mwariama was a master of forest warfare. He organized his camps with strict security. Even special scouts and layered sentry rings guarded his forces. Teams of scouts patrolled every approach, listening and watching for danger. Behind them stood disciplined patrols ready to engage any threat. This elaborate system helped protect Mwariama's camp and his men from surprise. He also kept his base mobile. By night, the fighters would slip from cave to cave, hill to hill, always changing location. In effect, they became shadows on the mountain. The British Royal Air Force found this especially frustrating. As RAF reports confirm, Mau Mau insurgents in Kenya often slipped deep into the forest reserves to dodge the bombing, staying just out of reach of Harvards and Mustangs. Mwariama's fighters knew which ravines hid them, and even lit decoy campfires to fool enemy spotters. In time, the British learned that hunting Mwariama was like chasing mist. He was never where they expected. Resistance after 1956, the lone Meru stand in 1956, the British finally captured Dedan Kimathi, and the rebellion seemed broken. Mau Mau historians note that Kimathi's fall signaled the defeat of the main uprising. But in the Meru hills, the war kept burning. Field Marshal Mwariama simply refused to surrender. Instead, he took up the banner of resistance alone. British columns swept through central Kenya, arresting or killing most leaders, but Mwariama's band of Meru fighters melted into the mountain canopies. By the late 1950s, nearly everyone else had laid down arms, all except this one stubborn force. Stationed in the Nyambene forests, Mwariama and his fighters waged a guerrilla campaign on their own. They raided patrols, evaded capture, and kept the flame of revolt alive. In effect, the Mau Mau rebellion in eastern Kenya continued long after it was thought over. To the British, it must have seemed like a ghost war, the Meru jungles still whispering with defiance, led by this dreadlocked lion of a warrior. Independence Day 1963, the forest emergence. Then came Kenya's independence. On December 12, 1963, Jomo Kenyatta summoned the old fighters to lay down arms and join the new Kenya. At a signal, Musa Mwariama marched out of the forest with roughly 2,000 of his surviving men. It was a dramatic scene. The Prime Minister surrounded by mountain guerrillas wearing ragged uniforms and wild dreadlocks. One famous photograph shows Mwariama at Kenyatta's side that day, an imposing figure towering in the front row. It was a powerful symbol. Freedom won at last, the rebels emerging from the jungle like ghosts into the light of a new nation. Mwariama's role was lauded in passing. He received the national honor of Elder of the Burning Spear after independence. The crowds cheered, the cameras flashed, and the long forest war finally came to an official close. The iconic 1963 photograph of Field Marshal Musa Mwariama, right, tall in dreadlocks, with President Jomo Kenyatta at Kenya's independence celebrations. Post-independence, honours and settlements. After Uhuru Day, reality set in for Kenya's former guerrillas. The new government offered some token honours. Mwariama wore the EBS medal on his chest, a sign of respect. But for actual rewards, many Mau Mau vets felt shortchanged. According to those who knew him, Mwariama's rewards were meagre. He was made only an assistant chief and given about 15 acres of land in Timau, on loan to pay back to the government. In other words, this rugged field marshal got a cold hillside plot and a small officer's job when other freedom fighters were given estates and government posts. As one observer put it, all he got was the order of Elder of the Burning Spear and a job as an assistant chief. No general's pension, no big farm, just a handful of acres in a chill wind far from the halls of Nairobi. It was a humble end for a war hero, and a bitter irony that Kenya's liberator was scarcely compensated for his service. Modest life and tragic end. Field Marshal Mwariama spent his remaining decades in quiet obscurity. He worked that hard land on the slopes of Mount Kenya, growing small crops and tending livestock. Neighbors recall him as gentle and unassuming, a far cry from the jungle warrior, but fate had one final twist for him. In 1989, at age 61, he traveled to visit a friend in neighboring Ukambani. The friend had been bitten by a venomous snake. Ever the fearless healer, Mwariama stooped to suck the poison from the man's wound. Legend says he had dental cavities and the venom slipped into his own mouth. Just like that, after surviving rockets, bullets and machetes, the old field marshal fell to snakebite. People who knew the story call his death paradoxical. The man who dodged the gunfire of empire ultimately died on a rainy plain by a snake's fangs. He was buried at his little 15-acre farm in Kiambogo, Meru, not far from the caves where he once hid. It was a small, silent funeral. No generals in uniforms this time, just local mourners saying goodbye to the old warrior. Legacy and memory. Today, Musa Mwariama's name lives on mostly in Meru lore. In that region, he is still remembered as a great man, the lion of the forest who fought the British with courage. Local history buffs cherish the photo of him with Kenyatta, and his grave is occasionally visited by visitors. In all of Kenya, however, Mwariama remains a largely forgotten hero. There are no city streets or schools named after him, unlike Dedan Kimathi, who finally got a Nairobi statue in 2007. This neglect is itself an irony. Kenyans today celebrate independence with parades and music, but a generation ago the leaders of the struggle were ignored. As one scholar notes, even the first presidents are viewed Mau Mau men as pariahs. Only a new government in the 2000s formally, officially recognized them as heroes of Kenyan independence. For Meru families, Mwariama is a folk hero and a proud ancestor. Photographs of the field marshal in dreadlocks still circulate in albums. Songs and stories recall how he outwitted the colonial army. Yet on the national stage, his legacy is quiet, a footnote to the story of Mau Mau. Other Mau Mau leaders, Kimathi and Kirima, comparing Mwariama to his comrades shows why he is often overshadowed. Dedan Kimathi, the Kikuyu field marshal captured in 1956, has become a household name, Kenya's other lost hero. Kimathi was executed by the British, then later revered by all Kenyans. He even has a bronze statue in central Nairobi. In textbooks, he is the image of Mau Mau resistance. Muthoni wa Kirima, by contrast, made history as the only woman to reach the rank of field marshal. She survived the war too and lived into old age, dying only in 2023. In recent years, Muthoni's own story has begun to be told. Her nickname, Weaver Bird, was given by Kimathi for her clever tactics, and her life has been highlighted as a unique tale of courage. But during their lifetimes, both Kimathi's and Kirima's families, like Mwariama's, knew official silence. All three fought the same guerrilla war, but only Dedan ended up in the national spotlight of Kenyan memory. Muthoni's contributions have only belatedly been acknowledged in news articles and oral histories, and even she noted with bitterness that the first post-independence regimes treated ex-fighters no better than the colonial one. Mwariama's absence from the narrative is part of this same historical omission. Remembering Kenya's freedom fighters. Kenya's relationship with its Mau Mau past is full of irony. Independence Day is now a national holiday, yet the very leaders who made independence possible were once vilified. President Kenyatta famously called Mau Mau a disease that must never be remembered. Decades of official disapproval followed, and veterans like Mwariama lived on the margins. In the 2000s, Kenya began reversing course, finally honoring old rebels with medals, compensation, and statues. But even today, the memory of Field Marshal Mwariama is a footnote. Some would say it's sad or ironic that a man so central to freeing Kenya would die in obscurity, and at the jaws of a snake rather than on the battlefield. Yet perhaps it's fitting too. He died doing what he always did, trying to help a friend, showing once again a courage that outlived empires. In Meru's green mountains, his legend quietly lives on. In the end, truth does outlive silence. The truth Mwariama's name promised from the start.